After an exciting week 1, let's look ahead to week 2, storylines, matchups, fantasy picks. Let's get after it.
Perfect.
Before we get too far into things, subscribe to support the channel, and of course, get the bell on to know every single time I'm dropping a video. And with that out of the way, it's on to the content. First things first, let's take a look at our marquee matchups of week 2. The Los Angeles Rams at the Indianapolis Colts. I like this matchup a lot because we have two budding offenses on the field with some really strong defense on either side of the football. Obviously, the Indianapolis Colts, their big superstar on the defensive line, going to beat DeForest Buckner, and likewise for the Los Angeles Rams, the best defensive lineman in the NFL in Aaron Donald, but also in that secondary, you got Jalen Ramsey. But on both of these offenses, you've got some good quarterbacks with a lot to prove. Matthew Stafford, obviously coming from Detroit this offseason, looked amazing against the Chicago Bears in week 1. And Carson Wentz still trying to get integrated into the Indianapolis Colts. A lot to prove under new head coach Frank Reich. So both these offenses have a lot at stake here, and I just like this matchup a lot because you have a couple of teams that are trying to emerge this season. The Colts are just trying to showcase that they belong in the playoff hunt and in the high-level conversations in the AFC, and the Los Angeles Rams are in an incredibly tough NFC West division, surrounded by teams like the Arizona Cardinals, Seattle Seahawks, and of course the San Francisco 49ers. The entire NFC West getting wins in week 1, so the Rams are going to try to keep things rolling in this matchup. I like this matchup a lot. It could be a lot closer than I think a lot of people expect. The Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Chargers, again, a couple of high-powered offenses here. For the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott showed out against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially in that passing game. Dak Prescott and his wide receivers just put on a show, and fantasy owners just absolutely ate it up. So a high-powered offense for the Dallas Cowboys and a defense that looked a lot more aggressive on the field. Dan Quinn doing a stellar job so far. Even in a loss against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just looked a lot more aggressive, a lot more focused, and a lot more polished than we've seen in the past. And for the Los Angeles Chargers, you've got Justin Herbert, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, and of course, Keenan Allen. And last week, Justin Herbert leading a strong drive at the end of the game to shut out the Washington football team. A strong defensive front was just not enough to slow down this offense. And even the defense for the Los Angeles Chargers stepping up and making some big plays to keep them in the game, to keep things close. Kansas City and Baltimore, a brewing rivalry between two AFC contenders. For the Kansas City Chiefs, it's just continuing their dominance over the entire AFC. Last week, with a comeback win over the AFC North Cleveland Browns, another team I think is going to make the playoffs, and another AFC North opponent, the Baltimore Ravens. This week, the Kansas City Chiefs, once you have more of an offensive dominant display this week, showing that, hey, this game shouldn't be as close as I think a lot of people are going to project it to be. And for the Baltimore Ravens, after a tough overtime loss on Monday Night Football to the Las Vegas Raiders, just trying to regain their footing and try to separate themselves from the rest of their AFC North counterparts. Lamar Jackson still looked pretty good in that game, even though a late fumble costing the Baltimore Ravens. So the Baltimore Ravens is trying to play some catch up, trying to just get themselves back on their feet, and honestly just trying to show they can still dominate in the running game. And the Kansas City Chiefs, like I said, just trying to continue their asserted dominance over the AFC. Final matchup I wanted to spotlight, the Tennessee Titans and the Seattle Seahawks. Two offenses that have a lot of firepower. Tennessee last week just got demolished by the NFC West Arizona Cardinals. Pass rush, Chandler Jones putting up 5 sacks against this offensive line. So Tennessee has a lot to prove here. They've got to prove that, hey, the acquisition of Julio Jones is going to help bolster this offense. Last week, Julio and A.J. Brown combined for less than 100 yards. And if I'm not mistaken, only like 6 total catches and 1 touchdown. So the offensive passing game needs to see some improvement. Derrick Henry just could not get the ball rolling until late in the game when there was a huge gap between both of these teams. So this week, the Seattle Seahawks defense is going to be one of those secondaries that the Tennessee Titans are going to try to take advantage of. One of the bottom 10 secondaries heading into the season via Pro Football Focus. And for the Seattle Seahawks, they're looking at a Tennessee Titans defense that last week just got completely exposed in the secondary as well. DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Kyler Murray just tore things up against the Tennessee Titans last week. I think DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Russell Wilson are going to dominate this day. It's going to be a really interesting matchup with a ton of offense, and the fans, the 12th man back into the stand is going to be huge for the Seattle Seahawks. Checking out fantasy football, let's take a look at my picks that I think are going to pop this week. Starting off with the New England Patriots taking on the New York Jets this week. You got a rookie quarterback, and Bill Belichick absolutely eats up rookie quarterback. Zach Wilson is going to be in for a long day, along with rookie head coach Robert Saleh, because this New England Patriots defense last week only allowed 17 points, even in a loss to in-division Miami. I think the New England Patriots secondary, their pass rush is going to just be eating up against the New York Jets. Matt Judon is going to take advantage of a Mekhi Becton-less offensive line, so expect there to be a big day for the New England Patriots defense, and if you've got the Patriots defense, you should absolutely be starting them this week. Spotlighting KJ Osborne of the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings last week relied a lot on Osborne coming out of the slot against the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Osborne has a lot of potential in this week's matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, because last week, what we saw the Cardinals defense do to Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, holding them under 100 yards, you could very well see them doing that again this week against Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So Osborne's going to take advantage of a lot of those slot opportunities, those number 3 wide receiver opportunities. He could just be a nice add if you're in a pinch at wide receiver. Final player I wanted to spotlight this week is going to be Melvin Gordon, the running back for the Denver Broncos. Going to be taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And last week, the Jaguars defense allowed 3 touchdowns to the Texans running backs, 2 to Mark Ingram, of all people. So Melvin Gordon has a great opportunity to pop off for fantasy owners this week. I expect him to do a lot on the ground as the passing game is still trying to get itself established. The loss of Jerry Jeudy means there's going to be more touches for Melvin Gordon, and I expect him to have at least 1 to 2 touchdowns and could very easily get 100 yards on the ground. Now, let's move on to picks. First thing up this Sunday, the Las Vegas Raiders heading into Pittsburgh, and pretty simple, straightforward. I think Pittsburgh's defense is going to dominate the day. I'm expecting Najee Harris to get a lot more touches than he did last week, so give me the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this with a big defensive effort. San Francisco and the Philadelphia Eagles, a matchup that could be a lot closer than experts are anticipating. The Philadelphia Eagles defense stepped up big last week against the Atlanta Falcons. San Francisco's defense down the stretch started to crumble a little bit. I'm going to take San Francisco here, but don't be surprised if Jalen Hurts and company come out and have a big day against a San Francisco defense that last week just looked a little bit more pedestrian. Houston and the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns looking to bounce back after a loss to the Kansas City Chiefs last week. This is pretty simple, straightforward, taking Baker Mayfield and company. Denver and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville last week was able to put up some pretty good numbers, even in a loss, 3 touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence, but I'm going to take the Denver Broncos with an overall just better and more prepared roster. New Orleans and the Carolina Panthers, going to be a solid tune-up game for Jameis, Winston and company. Going to take New Orleans here, as Carolina last week looked to have its fair share of struggles against the New York Jets. The LA Rams and the Indianapolis Colts, a little bit more one-sided here. I'm still going to go with the Los Angeles Rams, but like I said earlier, expect it to be a little bit closer than anticipated. Buffalo at the Miami Dolphins. I'm going to be taking Buffalo in this game. They really need a big bounce back, and last week showed the timid Miami Dolphins offense only put up 17 points. I expect there to be a lot more points on the board from Buffalo this week with a chip on their shoulder. Another AFC East division matchup, the New England Patriots heading over to MetLife to take on the New York Jets. Bill Belichick's defense is going to dominate the day. I expect the Patriots offense to do its job. Give me the New England Patriots. Cincinnati and the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. This is going to be a big matchup of can Khalil Mack get after Joe Burrow, and are the Bengals offense going to remain explosive? I'm going to take the latter here. Give me the Cincinnati Bengals offense on the day. Atlanta going into Tampa Bay. Last week, disappointing loss against the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think things are going to get too much better against the Bucks, so give me the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Minnesota and the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona popped off huge last week against the Tennessee Titans, and I don't expect them to stop anytime soon. Give me the Cardinals here. Tennessee and Seattle. The return of the 12th man is going to be huge in this offensive shootout. Give me the Seattle Seahawks to take advantage of a weaker Tennessee Titans secondary. Dallas and the Los Angeles Chargers, another offensive shootout, but I'm going to take the LA Chargers at home here in a game that's going to be really close. Sunday Night Football, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. This is going to be a really exciting matchup as long as Baltimore can avoid costly mistakes down the stretch, but I'm still going to take the Kansas City Chiefs. That offense is just way too dominant. And the final matchup, Monday Night Football, Detroit taking on the Green Bay Packers. This is going to be an interesting one as it has been in the past, but I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers with a little bit of hesitance. And before we get out of here, I want to talk about a few more stories as we head into week 2, the week 2 roundup. Couple of big questions. Is Aaron Rodgers going to actively tank this season? An abysmal performance against the New Orleans Saints in week 1 saw him put up 1 fantasy point for fantasy owners. Is Aaron Rodgers actively trying to get traded? Is he trying to get the heck out of Green Bay? Who knows? Maybe it was just a bad week 1. No one's really sure, but we're going to have to keep track of this storyline moving forward. In Chicago, how long is it going to be before Justin Fields is taking the field as QB1? There have already been a few calls for Justin Fields to be put in that position as the offense looked a little bit more explosive with him on the field, so just another storyline to keep track of. The Cincinnati Bengals were explosive with Joe Burrow under center, but that offensive line still allowed 5 sacks this past week against the Minnesota Vikings. Taking on the Chicago Bears and Khalil Mack, how long is Joe Burrow going to remain upright and steady? Because that offensive line so far has not shown any signs of improvement. And the final question, is Jameis Winston really that dude for the New Orleans Saints? He cleaned up against the Green Bay Packers, putting up 5 touchdowns against the Packers defense, but moving forward along the season, how long is Jameis Winston going to be able to sustain that success? We're just going to have to keep our eyes on that as the New Orleans Saints got, in my opinion, a little bit lucky in week 1. Just a few questions to consider as we head into week 2 NFL Sunday / a little sprinkle of Monday. Feel free to also check me out on all my social medias down in the description below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and of course get the bell on to know every single time I'm dropping a video. My name is Tristan Blake Rines, and I'm going to catch you in the next one. Adios.